Starting with bronze, I'm not gonna give the basic answer of just work on your mechanics, or play DPS Moira, or just flank on soldier, because let's face it, if those quick fixes really did the trick, you wouldn't be here watching this. Obviously, if you're new to the game, I suggest checking out some Overwatch settings videos. However, if you've been stuck in bronze for a long time, simply tweaking your settings aren't gonna cut it. Instead, I'm gonna focus on two main things. First up, let's talk about expanding your mental bandwidth. In other words, trying to not get overwhelmed when a lot of stuff is happening on your screen. If you read testimony from a lot of bronze players, they'll refer to this themselves. I've made a separate video entirely on focus, attention and awareness, but in short, think of it like learning to drive for the first time. When you're learning to drive, you have to juggle 1,000 things at once. By repeatedly immersing yourself in those situations, like learning a roundabout, you'll gradually develop a mental framework that helps reduce the cognitive load. If you're still stuck in bronze after hundreds of hours, there might be another factor at play: synchronizing. In other words, leverage the idiocy of your teammates in bronze to your advantage. If your Reinhardt is pinning in 1v5, leverage the attention and space he's creating to go in yourself and go for a kill. Don't just stand there while he goes in, take an angle and go in yourself. They're not going to be looking at you, they're going to be looking at your feeding Reinhardt. At the end of the day, in bronze, there's multiple ways to skin a cat and there's multiple ways to get out of the rank. You could spend hours in Vaxter just training your mechanics, or spending hours in a third-party aim trainer with a guide, and that might get you over to silver. You could do one of the cheap tricks, taking solo flanks with Soldier or Moira, but that probably won't work for you if you're already not good enough on the hero. Or you could look to play to your own strengths and your team's strengths, looking to synchronize your pressure whenever your teammates feed, which is commonplace in bronze. If you are experienced in FPS games but new to Overwatch, simply putting in the hours should help you advance to silver. For silver, let's keep it simple. You're quite early on in your Overwatch journey, and the main thing I want to focus on here is cover usage or corner usage. This might sound obvious and it's not just for silver players, but mastering this early will save you a lot of hassle down the line. I've coached top 500 players with insane mechanics, but cover usage so poor that it loses us tournament games. You need to build a strong foundation before you move on to more complex concepts, and cover usage isn't even particularly that hard to implement. Just remember to stick close to a corner or some cover during fights instead of swinging out in the open, which exposes you entirely. A similar mentality is what I want to apply here over to gold players, but there's two main bits of advice here. Firstly, focus on solidifying your hero pool to just 2 or 3 heroes. You can one trick, but remember the key is to excel at your hero. That's why unranked GM players exist. They're experts at making a hero work, even in the toughest spots. A common issue in gold is having a hero pool too wide, such that you don't actually improve on any specific hero. You end up just being mediocre at all of them. Stick to heroes you enjoy, ones that you're fairly good at, and those with similar aiming styles. It's pretty straightforward. As for the other tip, this one is about having specific intention with your play, which sounds kinda vague, but it'll become clear when I explain it. This is supposed to counteract the TikTok ADHD attention spans that people have, which can result in players just tank farming and not going for a more killable or a more dangerous target, and it can result in players wasting cooldowns for no reason, just to feel like they're doing more. For instance, if you're playing Ram, don't just focus on their tank. As Sigma, use your shield to block a DPS threat or the distant Ana healing, and remember to lower your shield afterwards. Many players at this rank struggle with shielding as well, often wasting it unnecessarily. Avoid wasting your shield on minor damage early on in a fight. Support cooldowns are a big one too. In my opinion, all of this is coming down to a lack of thought. Deep down, you want to get that dopamine hit of hitting your cooldown buttons as often as you can, and it ends up in your cooldowns getting suboptimal value. A bit more conscious intention and thought on whether you really need to use that ability instead of just going with your gut might help cut down on wasted cooldowns and poor target selection, and as a result, help you get to plat. At this level, I'm going to dive deeper into positioning strategies. If you've had my coaching or you've been following along for a while, you'll recognize this next concept, and it's mid-fight rotations. About half a year ago, I made an entire video dedicated to this concept because it's just so pivotal in all ranks, and especially higher up. But this is one of the biggest things that differentiate players from lower to higher ranks. Mid-fight rotations involve adapting to take the best angle or position as the fight unfolds. Mid-fight rotations can be aggressive, defensive, or a mix of both. So now you need to rotate. Hypothetically, let's say you were here. You see that person over there?
Yeah.
You know? Maybe you even push right here as well. Good cover, great angle, suits the sightlines of your hero. And if this person ever gets close to you, you flash her, you know? This is the thing with this rank. It's not necessarily what you do that is the mistake, it's what you don't do. This will dictate whether you lose or win matches. Making this rotation here. No doubt, you'll need to invest some time in developing a mental schema to spot and execute these rotations effectively in a game, but once you've got it down, a rank increase is pretty much guaranteed. Up next in Diamond is what I like to call compositional confidence. In other words, it's knowing how the playstyle of your hero changes according to what your comp is and what the enemy team's comp is as well. Now, unlike the other parts of this video, there isn't a clear directory of how to play every hero into every comp, but I have made 3 compositional guides going over the 3 main archetypes being Brawl, Dive, and Poke, which explains how all 3 of those things interact with each other. Generally, especially in ranked games, you're gonna encounter a bizarre mix of comps that might completely stump you. And even if you know what to do, you might have a tough time applying that to a specific map. What I'd at least start off with is looking at the range and mobility of the enemy composition and the range and mobility of your own hero. For example, if you're playing a hero with both mobility and range, like a soldier, a sojourn, or an echo, think about how and when you can leverage your poke and your mobility. If you're up against a Winston, Ana, Zen, Sombra kind of comp, flanking early on is a risk since Winston and Sombra will likely catch you. Sitting back won't work either, as a Zen Ana are gonna get more value. So you have to find some middle ground in between, being able to poke on early and to absorb that Winston Sombra dive, and then when they're out, you can look to flank on the Ana Zen. If in doubt, you can always check out my hero guides, which should include a pretty in-depth breakdown macro-wise, but should still be digestible enough for you to understand. Next up in Master, the defining aspect is dynamic positioning. You can think of this like mid-fight rotations, but on steroids. Dynamic positioning involves moving fluidly across the map, never staying in one place for too long. This is crucial against dive comps, since staying in one spot for too long makes you an easy target. I cover this at the end of my mid-fight rotations video, but generally, against dive comps, it's smart to create distance and utilize high ground to buy yourself more time. I've also often discussed using high ground as a kiting tool in many of my videos. Tracer, Sombra, and every ground tank in the game can't catch you if you head back to high ground, just like I show here. If you stand here the entire time, the Tracer's going to stage onto you, and she's going to know where you are, and she's going to stage onto you, and she's going to dive you. That is how static positioning works. But if you manage to rotate from here to here, and your Ashe should actually be following in suit, or maybe you guys get a bit of space and you're able to rotate to their high ground with your Ashe, that's really good. Because it means that their Trace is going to be AFK or MIA the entire time. Now in Grandmaster, what advice would I give to you? Well, it's gonna be a bit more team related, but it's all about anticipation and fight planning. This will obviously be harder to do in ranked than team play, but anticipating in ranked can happen too. The best example I can give is trying to make a play when you know the enemy team have a ton of ultimates. If you play like you normally do, the enemy team's ult advantage will just overwhelm you, so hiding behind like a gremlin or trying to make some kind of coordinated play is the only answer. A great fight plan here might be you bait them into open space over here, you stick your Iliari here, maybe your Echo flanks around late in the fight, comes around like this, and then you've got like a 2-2-1 kind of pincer from 3 different angles, you know? That's super hard to deal with because this is open space. Now, this fight is extremely chaotic, but it's the only option you have against their list of ultimates. So champion. Now I know there's not going to be a single champion player watching this, but if I was talking to a champion player and had to give them advice, it would be about consistency. A few years ago, I made fun of Spylo claiming that Backbone, the DPS player for the London Spitfire, was a top 5 Genji, and this was during the dreaded Queen meta, for those who remember, and obviously it seems like a silly statement. But the point Spylo was trying to get across was that the reason why people like Proper, Kevster, Lip, Fearless are considered the GOATs is because they are consistently very good. Even at their worst, they still perform within the top 20% of professional players out there. They don't have off days. Even recently, we saw Toronto and Dallas flop massively and come 6th, mainly because of their wildly inconsistent play. And SSG, arguably the best team in America and in Europe right now, get 3-0'd by Gaming Gladiators, formerly known as Team Peps, who are probably the 4th or 5th best team in Europe. Following this loss, fans gassed Team Peps, but in reality, it was just an off day for SSG. They weren't at their consistent top level, and even the analysis I did on TikTok showed that. Their map control was sloppy, especially from Funny Astro and Backbone on one map, which led to them being punished. It's incredibly challenging for even the world's best players to maintain consistent excellence, because there is no room for an off day. And even worse, there is no easy way to become consistently good at something. The main way is just progressive overload. You have to engage in so many high-level intense matches repeatedly that you become almost numb to the pressure. If you're a rookie, you need to rack up as many on-stage reps as possible. If you're a high-level team, you've got to practice by playing against other elite squads. Arguably, this is one of the reasons why Toronto failed, because their region is shit. There is no competition in North America. Other mental factors like ego, fatigue, and just overall mental sluggishness can contribute to reduced consistency as well, which is what I'd likely say is the reason why SSG lost. Anyways, that's it for the video. If you enjoyed, be sure to let me know down below, and if this video helped to raise your IQ, be sure to share it with your friends to also raise theirs. Until next time.